I want to start this morning by asking you a question. When was the last time you had a change of heart and mind? Now, some of you may only need to look at the sweep of the second hand of your watch to answer that question. For others of you, you'll need to pull out the calendar. And even that may not go back far enough. A few of you may be thinking, last time I had a change of heart and mind. Well, I think it was April 1964. And I've regretted it ever since. A change of heart and mind. There is a 30-second advertisement running on television right now for State Farm Insurance. It's entitled Never. Have you seen it? In the opening scene, there are these three young men in their early 20s sitting around a swimming pool at what appears to be a rather lively social gathering, complete with very attractive young women, and the one guy says, "I am never getting married." To which the other responds, "Never. Guaranteed." Cut to scene 2. A box holding an engagement ring snaps open, and the same guy is standing in the jewelry store, and the sales clerk behind the counter says, "You've picked a beautiful ring." Amen. Cut to scene 3. Same guy on an airplane with his new wife, and in the seat behind them is a toddler throwing a fever-pitched temper tantrum. And the guy says, "We're never having kids." To which the wife shakes her head in agreement. Never. Cut to scene 4. The wife, her face clenched in pain, comes up and back down in the hospital bed. The husband, sweating profusely, holds her hand as she is about to give birth. Cut to scene 5. The same couple, and now with their baby daughter, sitting around the dining table in a hip and cool urban downtown loft apartment, and the wife says, "Oh, I love it here," and the husband responds, "We're never moving to the suburbs." Cut to scene 6. The husband is trimming the hedges in the front of a 2-story colonial on a tree-lined suburban street while the wife is playing with their slightly older toddler in the front yard. The sound of a car horn is heard as a minivan drives by, and the husband says, "We're never getting one of those." And the wife nods, "Never." Cut to scene 7. The husband is slapping a soapy sponge across the hood of what? A minute. Cut to scene 8. The husband is on his knees, scrubbing crayon artistry off of the wall of the den, and he says to his wife as she walks by with a load of laundry, "We're never having another kid." To which she responds with a frazzled look, "I'm pregnant." Cut to the final scene. The husband and the wife, their two preschool-aged daughters, are cuddled up together on the sofa, and the husband says, "I'm never letting go." And the voiceover chimes in, for all the nevers in life, State Farm is there. For all the changes of heart and mind in life, who is there? Jesus. When was the last time you had a change of heart and mind? In some circles, Christianity has been interpreted as a faith for the nevers, a faith suited for keeping folks from having a change of heart and mind. Once locked into an understanding of the Bible or certain teachings and tenets and dogmas of the faith, some of us may have been taught along the way that you dare not question, you dare not challenge, you dare not ponder anything or listen to anyone who would would suggest a new way of looking at things. Do not take in information that could shed a new light on old understandings. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for me. It was good for Paul and Silas, right? And it's good enough for me. Well, the irony of that statement is the Apostle Paul is really the poster child for giving up that old-time religion and having a dramatically profound change of heart and mind. In our scripture today, Paul reminds the Christians in the Galatian church of his journey. Paul, we once knew, was a man named Saul of Tarsus. Saul was a religious man, a very religious man, a devout and devoted and dedicated man to his faith. Saul was not a prodigal son type, outliving the morally corrupt and wildly reckless lifestyle. Saul was disciplined in what he believed and how he lived consistently with those beliefs. The last word that could be used to describe the man Saul was wishy-washy. Wishy-washiness is often looked upon as a negative character quality. We hold in high regard decisiveness, don't we? Make a decision and stick with it. It's an aspirational goal in our world. I worry sometimes about myself in that regard. Am I wishy-washy? Am I? Do you ever have trouble making a decision? Sticking with a decision? A routine conversation at the Stutler household goes something like this. What do you want to eat tonight? I don't know. What do you want? I don't care. You decide. No, well, I'm not going to decide. Anything's fine, anything. Oh, all right. Well, how about Chinese? No, I don't want Chinese. Mexican? Oh, had that for lunch. Want to grill some hamburgers? No, don't have any gas in the grill. Well, what do you want? I don't care. Anything's fine. Takes 3 times as long to decide upon a meal as it takes to eat the meal. Sometimes, do you not, like me, long for a 3 channels on the TV, fewer choices will hurt? On another front, I have purposely sought out partners in the ministry here who can help provide consistency in our guidelines and clarity in our expectations. Because you see, I know that some of you have figured out and you've zeroed in like a heat-seeking missile on the fact that I am a marshmallow when it comes to certain things. And so you bypass what, in fairness to you, may not be always a well-defined process, and you come to me about things. Now, my door is always open, always will be. Well, sometimes it's closed, but most of the time it's open. But I'm working on deferring authority over some things around here to those who are better at consistency and clarity than I am. And my appeal to you is to treat with respect everyone on the staff here for the job that they've been asked to do, even if you disagree with their decision. I promise you this, that on the stuff that matters most, there will always be an abundance of grace here. But on the day-to-day stuff, which is necessary to keep us from living in chaos, we are striving to be better defined. You know, love sometimes comes expressed in boundaries and consequences. And in the answer, no, or not now. Okay? Okay? I think, though, there's a difference between being wishy-washy and being willing and open to a change of heart and mind. Paul, the man once Saul, illustrates that in the story of his own life. Fred Craddock summarizes where Saul turned Paul came from when he says, Saul of Tarsus was young and intelligent. He was committed to the traditions of his fathers, strong and zealous for his nation and for his religion, outstripping, he says, all of his classmates in his zeal for his own people. While he pursues his own convictions, there develops, though, within the bosom of Judaism, a new group called Nazarenes, followers of Jesus. They seem at first to pose no threat. After all, Judaism had long been broadly liberal and had tolerated within her house of faith a number of differing groups, such as Pharisees and Sadducees and Essenes and Zealots. So why not Nazarenes? As long as they continue in the temple and in the synagogue, there is no problem with them. But before long, among these new Christians, a different sound is heard. Some of the young radicals are beginning to say things like, Christianity is not just for the Jews, but it's for anyone who believes in Jesus Christ. Such was the preaching of Stephen and Philip and others. It doesn't really matter what your background is. It doesn't have to be Jewish as long as you trust in God, as long as you believe in Jesus Christ. This startling word strikes the ear of young Saul. What do they mean it doesn't matter? It does matter. It's the most important matter. No young preacher can stand up and say that thousands and thousands of years of mistreatment and exile and the burden of trying to be true to God, of struggling to be His people and keep the candle of faith burning in a dark and pagan world means nothing. What do they mean? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to have your gabardine spat upon and to be made fun of because you're different. Of course it matters, said the young Saul. Saul, in his passion for protecting his interpretation of biblical faith, he commits himself to eradicate what he perceives to be an apostasy of the true faith, of the biblical faith in which he had grounded his life. Saul was convinced that these Nazarenes, these followers of the way, these Jesus freaks were a danger and they needed to be eliminated. And so Saul participates in what can be described as religious terrorism. What we may understand as acts of murderous evil toward good people, Saul understood as being necessary to the defense of God's law and the souls of his own people. Saul was doing his very best to guard his people from a change of heart and mind. But then, something happens to Saul. In the book of Acts, chapter 9, there's a dramatic story told of Saul being knocked to the ground and blinded by a light in order that he might recognize the Lord in a life-changing encounter with the risen Jesus. Go home today and read Acts chapter 9. It's an amazing story. Most of us tend to read that story as being a dividing line in Paul's life. Before that, he was a mean hater of the Jesus people, and after it, he's God's apostle. Though we don't have tons of information about his conversion, his change of mind and heart, we have enough to let us know that it's more lengthy and it's more complicated than a simple single event. Isn't it always? One commentator on this passage says today's text tells us that Paul didn't immediately turn from one way of life to another. He spent 3 years in preparation, in study, in prayer, in conversation. 3 years. And during that time, he was not only learning the new ways of thinking and acting and relating, he was unlearning the old ways, which can be very hard to do. He was surely meeting with people, though not the apostles, and he was listening to their stories. That is, the people who were brave enough to meet with him. For they all knew, he knew what he used to be and do, and they were understandably leery of Paul. He'd been an evangelist for the old faith, threatened by the new faith, and he was instrumental in persecuting those who followed Jesus. I'd like to think that Paul's conversion started much earlier than the event on the road to Damascus. For in Acts chapter 7, we're told that Paul stood by while Stephen, a deacon of the church, was stoned to death. Paul was minding the coats of the witnesses. What if on that day, and maybe on other days like it, Paul began to see how his movement had gone wrong? What if the suffering and the prayers of Stephen dug a new trench into Paul's soul? What if at that moment he began to slowly listen to the voices of those that he had objectified for so long as being different and wrong? Then came the On the Way to Damascus event, followed by 3 years of more observing, more learning, more praying, more encounters. Now, Paul didn't emerge from those experiences as a perfect person, but he did emerge as a changed person, a person whose heart and mind were changed. Writer and pastor Melissa Bain Seaver asked some very good questions about this passage when she says, what about us? What about us? When have our minds and hearts been changed? Through experiences. God continues to work today through our experiences. Or when have we been changed by listening to people who are different from us? Amen. What if we did that in this country? People of another race or religion. Listen to them. People of a different social class, or a different generation, or a different national origin, or what about if we listen to a refugee or an immigrant? What if we listen to gay and lesbian persons? What if we listen to those with mental illness or a physical disability? And so when we start thinking and talking about other people and other groups, we might think again about how we objectify them and stereotype them. We may think we know what's best for them. But when we meet people and we build relationships with them and we stop talking long enough to hear them and absorb their stories, sometimes we're changed. When was the last time you had a change of heart and mind? Oftentimes, life experiences bring about a change of heart and mind. Our priorities were in one place, and then we're struck with an unexpected test result, or a loved one leaves suddenly, or a new child is born, maybe twins. And our priorities shift, don't they? They change. Our hearts and our minds change. Oftentimes, new relationships bring about a change. We think the world is one way. We think what matters most is this. And then we meet someone and we truly listen to their hearts. And suddenly, our perspective is altered. A change of heart and mind. Or what about if we dare get an education? Education does that to us, doesn't it? We learn new information. We gain a new insight. And we find our heart and mind changed. What I take from this scripture is that when we meet Jesus, when Jesus gets inside of us, things are going to change. Amen. Now, change is a process, without a doubt. Leaving a life of selfishness, leaving a life of addiction, leaving a life of prejudice, leaving a life of bitterness, a life of